Open your refrigerator for a second. Inside, you'll probably find food from all over the world. Milk that stays fresh for weeks, bread that someone else baked, fruit that crossed oceans before reaching your kitchen. You barely have to think about your next meal. Now imagine taking all of it away. No supermarkets, no farms, no restaurants, no refrigerators, just you and the wilderness. Would you know what to eat? Most people think they would. After all, forests are full of plants, rivers have fish, and animals are everywhere. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If you were dropped into the world of 100,000 years ago, you'd probably starve. Not because there wasn't enough food, but because you wouldn't recognize most of it. For ancient humans, finding something to eat wasn't the hardest part. Knowing what wouldn't kill you was, and that raises a much bigger question. What did our ancestors actually eat for the millions of years before farming, grocery stores, or even cooking existed? The answer isn't one single food. It's a story of survival, cleverness, and a body that still remembers a world that's long gone. When people picture prehistoric humans, they often imagine fearless hunters charging toward giant mammoths with wooden spears. It makes for a great movie, but it probably wasn't how our story began. For a very long time, our ancestors weren't at the top of the food chain. They spent much of their lives watching predators instead of becoming them. Imagine a pride of lions bringing down an antelope. The lions eat first, then come the hyenas. Finally, vultures strip away whatever little remains. At first glance, it looks like there's nothing left, but ancient humans saw something the others couldn't: opportunity. Using simple stone tools, they smashed open the thick leg bones that even powerful jaws struggled to crack. Hidden inside was bone marrow, a soft, fatty tissue packed with energy. Today, most people never think about eating bone marrow. Back then, it was one of the most valuable foods on Earth. It was clean, protected inside the bone, and rich in calories at a time when every meal mattered. Archaeologists have found thousands of ancient animal bones bearing these distinctive break marks, showing that our ancestors repeatedly returned to carcasses to collect what other scavengers had left behind. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. Sometimes surviving isn't about finding the perfect meal. It's about finding the meal everyone else overlooked. That strategy may also explain something about you. Have you ever wondered why fatty foods are so satisfying? Why a rich meal feels rewarding in a way a bowl of plain lettuce rarely does? Your brain didn't invent that preference yesterday. For millions of years, fat was incredibly rare. Whenever our ancestors found it, eating as much as possible increased their chances of surviving the next stretch without food. Natural selection rewarded people who craved high-energy foods. Those instincts are still with us. The problem is that your brain is living in the Stone Age, while your kitchen is living in the 21st century. But ancient humans didn't survive on animal remains alone. In fact, one of their most reliable food sources was something many people today would never even consider putting on a plate: insects. Beetles hidden beneath tree bark, fat grubs buried inside rotten logs, crunchy termites collected from towering mounds. They were everywhere. Unlike large animals, insects couldn't outrun humans, and they didn't require dangerous hunts. More importantly, they were surprisingly nutritious. Many insects are rich in protein, healthy fats, vitamins, and minerals. Even today, more than 2 billion people around the world regularly eat insects as part of their traditional diets. So while it might seem unusual in many modern cultures, for ancient humans it was simply another smart way to survive. And that reveals something important. Our ancestors weren't picky eaters. They couldn't afford to be. Every successful meal came from understanding the land around them better than anyone else. Because in a world without supermarkets, the greatest survival skill wasn't strength, it was knowledge, and that knowledge was about to change human history forever. For hundreds of thousands of years, this was everyday life. Search, find, eat, repeat. Then something happened that changed not only what humans ate, but what humans would eventually become: fire. Today, lighting a fire takes seconds. For our ancestors, learning to control it may have been one of the greatest discoveries in history. Evidence from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa suggests humans were using controlled fire nearly 1 million years ago. Long before cities, kingdoms, or even modern humans existed, someone had already learned to keep flames alive. At first, fire offered warmth and protection from predators, but its greatest gift wasn't heat. It was dinner. Cooking completely transformed food. Think about the last time you bit into a raw potato. Hard, dry, almost impossible to enjoy. Now compare that to a baked potato. Soft, sweet, easy to eat. The same thing happens with meat. Heat breaks down tough fibers, making food easier to chew and digest. That means your body spends less energy processing a meal and more energy using it. Many scientists believe this simple change had enormous consequences. The human brain makes up only about 2% of our body weight, yet it uses roughly 20% of our daily energy. That's an expensive organ to run. Cooking may have given our ancestors access to enough extra calories to support larger, more powerful brains. In other words, every time someone gathered around a fire to cook, they weren't just making dinner, they were helping shape the future of our species. But here's something many people still get wrong. Ancient humans weren't living on meat alone. For years, popular culture painted prehistoric diets as endless feasts of mammoth steaks. The real picture is much more interesting. In Israel, archaeologists studying a site called Gesher Beno Yaakov uncovered evidence that humans living around 780,000 years ago were eating an astonishing variety of plant foods, not just berries. More than 50 different edible species, wild nuts, seeds, roots, leaves, fruits, even aquatic plants growing near lakes. This wasn't random snacking. It shows that early humans had an impressive understanding of the natural world. They knew which plants were safe, which ones were poisonous, which appeared only during certain seasons, and where to find them year after year. Some scientists have even discovered tiny grains of starch trapped inside the hardened dental plaque of ancient human teeth. Thousands of years later, those microscopic remains are still there, like fingerprints from an ancient meal. They reveal that prehistoric people were eating starchy plants long before agriculture ever existed. It's incredible to think that something as ordinary as plaque can preserve a menu from tens of thousands of years ago. Of course, plants alone couldn't always provide enough energy, especially during long winters or in colder regions. That's where hunting became increasingly important. By the time modern humans appeared, they had become remarkably skilled hunters. Working together, they brought down animals far larger than themselves: reindeer, wild horses, bison, even mammoths. Not because humans were the strongest animals. Far from it. A single mammoth outweighed an entire hunting group. Humans succeeded because they did something few other predators could. They planned. Instead of relying on speed or sharp teeth, they relied on communication, patience, and teamwork. Every successful hunt meant more than a full stomach. It meant fewer days spent searching for food, more time to make better tools, to care for children, to repair shelters, to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. Food wasn't just keeping people alive, it was creating the free time that allowed human culture to grow. But among everything our ancestors searched for, there was one food worth taking extraordinary risks to obtain: honey. Long before anyone planted sugarcane or baked cakes, honey was nature's sweetest reward. Finding it wasn't easy. Wild bees built their nests high inside hollow trees or hidden among dangerous cliffs. Reaching them meant climbing without ropes, without protective clothing, and without any guarantee of success. People were stung, sometimes badly, yet they kept going back. Why? Because honey delivered something almost impossible to find in the wild: a huge burst of energy in just a few mouthfuls. Even today, the Hadza people of Tanzania, one of the few remaining hunter-gatherer societies, can spend hours searching for wild honey because the reward is worth the effort. Their lives offer researchers a rare glimpse into behaviors that may stretch back hundreds of thousands of years. And perhaps that's why your own brain reacts the way it does when you smell fresh pastries, chocolate, or a cold, sugary drink. Your body isn't craving dessert. It's responding to a survival program that once treated every drop of sweetness as a gift. The modern world simply gives us more of that gift than our ancestors could ever have imagined, and that's where one of humanity's greatest strengths quietly became one of its biggest weaknesses. But ancient humans didn't always eat their food fresh. Without refrigerators or freezers, keeping meat from spoiling was almost impossible. So they adapted. In some places, hunters stored meat in cool caves, buried it underground, or left it in cold streams where lower temperatures slowed decay. When they returned days or even weeks later, the meat had already begun to change. To us, that sounds revolting. To them, it was practical. Modern scientists know that controlled fermentation can make certain foods easier to digest and even create important nutrients. While ancient people didn't understand bacteria, they understood something just as valuable through experience. They knew which foods were still safe to eat. It's a reminder that some of the foods we enjoy today, like yogurt, cheese, pickles, and sourdough bread, all rely on the same natural process: carefully controlled fermentation. In a way, our taste for fermented foods has roots that stretch back much further than most people realize. But archaeology has uncovered an even darker chapter of the human diet. At several prehistoric sites across Europe, researchers discovered human bones marked with the same cut marks found on hunted animals. Some bones had been carefully broken open, others showed signs that flesh had been deliberately removed using stone tools. These discoveries tell us that, at least in some places and at some times, humans ate other humans. What's important, though, is what scientists don't know. Not every case happened because people were starving. Some sites also contain the bones of deer, horses, and other animals, suggesting food was available. That has led many researchers to believe that some acts of cannibalism may have been linked to rituals, warfare, or cultural traditions rather than survival alone. Exactly why those practices existed is still debated. And perhaps that's what makes these discoveries so fascinating. Even after decades of research, there are still parts of our own story that remain a mystery. So, what did ancient humans actually eat? The simplest answer is whatever gave them the best chance of seeing another sunrise. Some days it was marrow hidden inside a broken bone. Other days it was handfuls of berries, edible roots, insects, fish, or a lucky find of wild honey. When a hunt succeeded, they shared meat. When it failed, they relied on knowledge, patience, and whatever nature was willing to offer. They weren't following a trendy diet. There was no perfect balance of protein, carbohydrates, or healthy fats. There was only one rule: survive. And maybe that's the biggest lesson their diet still has to teach us. Your body wasn't designed for a world where food is available every hour of every day. It was designed for uncertainty. That's why the smell of fresh bread is so hard to ignore, why sweet foods grab your attention, why rich, high-calorie meals feel satisfying even when you're not truly hungry. Those instincts aren't flaws. They're ancient survival tools doing exactly what they evolved to do. The only difference is that the world around them has changed faster than evolution ever could. So the next time you open your refrigerator late at night, remember this: you're standing in front of something your ancestors could never have imagined. A place where food is always waiting. No hunting, no climbing cliffs for honey, no searching through forests hoping to find something safe to eat. Just abundance. For millions of years, every human being who came before you lived with the possibility that tomorrow's meal might never come. You may be one of the first generations in history that doesn't have to worry about that. And perhaps that's the strangest part of this entire story. Not how ancient humans survived, but how incredibly different your world has become from theirs. If you enjoyed this journey into the distant past, make sure to subscribe and join us for more stories that uncover how our ancestors lived, survived, and shaped the world we know today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.